bad addict. Every time I was able to get a loan, I was doing drugs.
I've been to prison 4 times, twice in the state, twice in the fed.
I was doing all this crazy stuff, cooking drugs and just staying high.
God called me from a prison cell. I was a homeless drug addict, and my hope was found in a needle.
I was 8 months pregnant, homeless, living out of my van.
You know, it wasn't Freeway that saved me, it wasn't John Stroup that saved me, but God uses Freeway in such a mighty way as a tool to reach these people.
There's not a community or a county in America that doesn't have a drug problem. And the church has the answer, and it's the gospel of Jesus Christ. Welcome to One Broken Life. My name is John Stroup with my special guest, Andy Wilson.
Good afternoon.
Glad to have you, Andy.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
On One Broken Life, we explore the intimate details of people's lives. Many times we believe the bigger the mess, the bigger the message. And we get to peel back the layers of your life, Andy, open up your tent, look into your life and see where you come from in your past and where you are today. A couple theme verses. One is Philippians chapter 1, verse 12. It says, the sacrifices of God are broken. It says, brethren, the things that have happened to me have actually turned out for the furtherance of the gospel. Paul wrote that about the things in his past is actually God has used those things for him today. And then Psalms 51:17 says, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, and a contrite heart. God will not despise these things. And so today we get to talk to you about your life, and so tell our people where you come from, how you grew up, your childhood a little bit.
Well, I was born Beale Air Force Base, California. I'm a military brat. My dad was active duty Air Force. So born in California, shortly after I was born, I couldn't tell you exactly how old I was, too young to remember. He got transferred to Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City, and that's where I grew up, was Tinker Air Force Base. I remember when I was young, my parents were together. We were active in church. I was blessed. I was able to grow up in a church. Stayed in the same school system, didn't move around a whole bunch. My dad got out of active duty and did reserves after that, and then worked for the civil service. I remember when I was young, probably about 3rd grade, if I had to put an age on it, my mom went back to school. She wanted to supplement our income. Military doesn't pay very well. And my dad was struggling with a few things and wasn't wise with the finances. So grew up poor. So mom went to school and she, like I said, I was about 3rd grade. And when I was in 7th grade, got out of 7th grade, and my mom had graduated law school, while raising 2 kids basically by herself. And when she graduated law school, she left my dad and came back here to Springfield, Missouri, where she grew up, and brought my sister and I with her. I was here for about 1.5 years and then went back to Oklahoma City and lived with my dad after that. And that's where I was until I was about 17 years old. But that move back to Oklahoma City is when my life started to turn.
Okay.
We were all confused. My dad was not physically abusive to my mother, but he was mentally abusive. My dad knows it. He's deceased now, but he and I have had conversations about it, and I'm not afraid to say it. But the divorce was necessary, but it left my mom screwed up, to say it best, And so here my mom is, single mom, 2 kids, teenagers at that, because my sister's 23 months older than I am. And my dad told her, he said, send me Andy back and I can take care of him. What she didn't know is my dad's career was front and center in his life. So I went back to Oklahoma City, and my dad would get up on Monday morning at about 3 o'clock in the morning and jump on an airplane, and he'd be gone all week, working. And he'd get back Friday night late, take me to the grocery store, replenish my groceries, get in his car late Friday night, drive to Fort Worth, Texas, spend the weekend with his girlfriend, and then come back late Sunday night and get up again bright and early Monday morning and leave town again. And of course this is pre-cell phones, date myself a little bit, but pre-cellular phones. So here I am, a 14-year-old kid in the heart of Oklahoma City living alone. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out I found trouble before I found anything. So got mixed up with the typical group of people that a kid living alone would get mixed up with, started drinking at an early age. And I was probably full-blown alcoholic by the time I was 16 years old. And it didn't last, obviously. My dad, military man, my way or the highway. And of course, at this point in time, I wasn't willing to conform to him, so the highway it was. So at 16 years old, I was homeless in Oklahoma City. And that lasted until I was about 18 years old, and I moved back to Springfield. And when I came to Springfield, at the time, my mom was a Greene County prosecutor. She brought, I went up to the courthouse and told her I was moving back to Springfield. She said, well, you can't live with me. And I said, well, okay, that's fine. I'm still moving back to Springfield. So I came back to Springfield at the age of 18, and I stayed here permanently. I left and went to Lamar, Missouri, Barton County, Missouri, but by the time I was 18 years old, I was a daily drinker, heavy daily drinker. And I was 23 years old. My daughter was born. That was going to change my life, and it did. Just didn't change my drinking. It just made me a drunk dad is what it did. Been married and divorced twice through my alcoholism, always managing to choose poor relationships. It's hard to find somebody that's going to tolerate a drunk.
Well, most people who, I tell my son this, the only way you can have relationships with integrity is if you're a person of integrity. People of integrity don't last long in relationships with people who don't have integrity. So if you think about all the people, Andy, that you pour your life into, the people you trust, the people you can call, those people are people of integrity. And so if you're, not that you wasn't a person who stuck to his word, because I'm sure you were, but also that lifestyle that you lived, it's not going to last long with somebody. It's going to be a train wreck. You're going to attract those kind of people, or it's going to be, like a nuclear bomb, basically.
Right, and that's what it was. My daughter was never old enough to. My daughter was real little when her mom and I got divorced, and then by the time she was 4 years old, I was already in another marriage. And once again, I was not a man of integrity. I was a drunk, hiding, lying, sneaking, trying to hide what everybody already knew was true.
Did you ever go to jail?
Oh yeah. So probably the worst time in my life was when my daughter was about 4 or 5 years old. I'd been up all night drinking, and there was some drama at Mom's house, and Mom lived south of Fayetteville in Greenland, Arkansas, and I drove down to get my daughter, and I was driving home drunk, and I rear-ended a car at 60 miles an hour, drunk, with my daughter in the car. I picked up some pretty serious charges. Endangering the welfare of a child, of course, obviously felony DWI, vehicular assault. I mean, there was some pretty serious charges involved. The that wasn't enough to break me, though, and I'm ashamed of that. I can't undo that. I have sympathy for the people that we get to deal with today that don't have their kids, because I didn't get my kid, and I thought, man, I'm not a bad dad. I don't beat my daughter. That was how I justified it in those days. I'm not a bad dad. I don't hit my kid. I love my kid, but yet I was up all night drinking, and I drove with my kid, and I got in a wreck, and it could have killed her. By the grace of God, everybody was okay, and I got a 5-year SIS out of it, walked out my time and on paper, and it all went away, got another DWI after that. That DWI went away, got another one after that,
You were a functioning drunk, right?
Yeah. I was holding down a job. I went to work every day. Had money in the bank.
Did you go to church?
No. Once every blue moon, I would go to church. There for a while, before I went to Lamar, I thought, I'm going to change my life. And I joined Second Baptist Church here in town. And I was faithful about going to Second Baptist Church on Sundays. I would go on Sunday mornings, but my faith would stay in the church, and I'd walk outside, and I'd be right back on the same role I was always on.
You mentioned your mom and your dad. So where are they at while you're doing all this? I mean, your mom, we're going to talk about her a little bit, but not right now, but she's a very good friend of mine, and that's how me and you got connected. But, your mom's a prosecutor, your dad is Air Force man, military man, and you're trying to win a stupid contest, be as dumb as you can be, doing all the stuff drunk people do. So what's going on with them? Where are they at in this?
Well, my mom and I have always had a good relationship. Even though I was ate, breathed, drank, lived stupid, my mom always loved me. And so we always had a good relationship. And my dad, he just wanted as little to do with me as possible. From the age of 16 to 23, if I called my dad, he'd hang up on me. Wanted nothing to do with me. And I harbored a lot of grudge against him, a lot of animosity towards him because of that. And he had his own battles he was fighting. He had things he was going through. But my mom, she was always there for me. She always wanted me to be a part of things. The rule was I had to be sober. I would go, I would be a part of things, but I wouldn't stay long because the rule was I had to be sober. So I always had an excuse to be gone. I can't, let's see, it would have been the year 2000 when my mom started her new job. And it really, I think that particular new career of hers opened her eyes up to exactly how bad off I truly was.
You want to tell everybody what your mom did in 2000?
Yeah, so in the year 2000, my mom got appointed as the Greene County Drug Court Judge. She was the first drug court judge in Greene County, and she held that office until December of 2018. And through that, she really began to understand how bad off I was.
So you functioning drunk, holding a job, drinking, get in some trouble, get probation, get out, get the probation walk down, get jammed up again. Your relationships are now ruined. Your kids, how many kids do you have now?
I've just got the one biological daughter.
And so you have this daughter, and you're in a wreck with her in the car, which is hard to live down. I mean, yeah. And so you got that on the back of your head now. What brought you to your place of brokenness, Andy, to where you finally surrendered and said, this ain't how I want to live my life?
Well, towards the end of my addiction, I had a couple of things going against me. Couldn't sleep anymore. We as addicts, we serve the drugs that we use. And I found myself serving my alcohol. The alcohol actually owned me. I didn't own it. It would wake me up in the middle of the night and call my name, and I'd have to get up and drink to sleep. I couldn't start my day without drinking. And then the depression was horrible. From the outside looking in, if you didn't know me very well, you'd think I had everything together. You know, I was good at holding things back and hiding things and making it appear like I was together. But on the inside, I was a mess. And I would sit on my couch in my living room alone with my dog, with a bottle of vodka to my left, a can of beer to my right, and a pistol in my lap. And what finally hit me was the fact that I was going to eat that bullet. I had screwed up enough courage to eat the bullet.
And where were you at? I mean, so I know where you were at that time in your life, but no one else does. And so what did your 24-hour, your week, like where did you live? What did you do for a living? What was your life like then?
So I lived in Lamar, Missouri, just outside of Lamar, just a couple of miles northwest. If you're familiar with Barton County, I was out by the landfill. Was a farmer, was farming 500 acres. Had a house on a hill in the middle of land, the perfect picturesque farmscape, you know. I worked in town, full-time job for O'Reilly Auto Parts. So my day consisted of, when I wasn't at O'Reilly's, I was in a tractor. I was doing farm work, you know, growing corn, growing beans. I wasn't a cattle farmer. I guess I was too lazy to be a cattle farmer. I didn't want to get up in the middle of the night and chase cows that tore through my fence. But once again, on the outside, looking like it was all together in Lamar, Missouri, and you know, beautiful house on the hill, 2-story house, you know, sitting on 7.5 acres with horses and a pond, big barn, you know, and it was all together. Brand new pickup truck in the driveway. But when you opened up the door to the house and you walked in the house, you saw the chaos, because the inside of the house was like the inside of my life. It was absolute chaos. It wasn't fit to live in.
You know, we don't use drugs and drink because, you know, you weren't drinking because you were an alcoholic. And people who use drugs don't use drugs because they're drug addicts. You know, you have to figure out why are you drinking? Why are you turning to that alcohol? There's 2 questions every person has to ask. Who are you and what is your purpose? You have to be able to answer those 2 questions. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the answer to those 2 questions, you're going to struggle for the rest of your life. And, you know, there's a reason you drank. There's a reason you kept turning to alcohol. There's a reason you kept living in squalor and you didn't have no peace in your life. And it wasn't because you were an alcoholic. You know, just like me, there's a reason I was sticking needles in my arm. There was a reason I had no kind of self-worth. You know, I didn't even care if I lived or died. And it wasn't because I was an addict. And so there you are in this place. Now your drug court judge mom somehow intervenes in your life, right? Mm-hmm. When was the time you surrendered your life to Jesus, Andy?
I was actually young, you know, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I was at Cherry Street Baptist Church. The preacher was there. It was a guest preacher. It wasn't Pastor Gilming, but it was a guest preacher, and he was preaching on a sermon on the lion and the lamb. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I remember going forward, I was sitting with my grandpa Wilson, my dad's dad, because my dad's parents went to that church and my mom's parents went to that church. So I had both sets of grandparents there. And I surrendered my life. I asked God in my heart, and I know God came in, but I turned to my sin when I was young. And I stopped seeking God. I stopped living for God. And it's funny you talk about purpose, because that conversation I had with you that morning in January of 2019, I remember it well. When you asked me, you said, Andy, what's your purpose? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. It was the first time I was honest to anybody in a long time. I had no discipleship. I had no way to grow. When I left Springfield that summer, because I was only here for the summer visiting, I went back home. We were still involved in church at that time, but after my parents divorced, my time in church came to an end. You know, it was typical big Southern Baptist church in the South. You know, discipleship wasn't a thing.
So you, my phone rings, and you call me, and you got dates better than me. You said January 2019, and I remember I got a message, I think, first, right?
Yes.
And then ended up calling you back, and lo and behold, the drug court judge here in town, who is a very good friend of mine, she pointed you to, do you want to tell everybody kind of how that happened?
Yeah, so I'm at the end of myself. I know at this point in my life I'm either going to live or die. Those were my two options. And if I stayed where I was, if I continued doing what I was doing, it was death. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I was at the end. So I called my mom, and I said, I can't do this anymore. What do I do? And she said, you call John Stroup. And I said, who's this John Stroup? You know, and she says, Andrew, I've used him. I've sent people there. They're the real deal. I've seen the miracles come out of there. They are the real deal. You call him, you tell him who you are, and you tell him I said to call him. And so I blew your phone up. It was actually New Year's Day. You know, it was my big New Year's resolution, even though I've never believed in them, and I still don't. But it was my big New Year's thing, and I blew your phone up as a holiday. Of course, you didn't answer, you know, but you did call me back the next day, and we had that conversation, and you said you said, I'm going to send you an application. You sent me an application. I filled it out and I sent it back to you, and you said we're going to take you, you know, and I told you, I can't. I need 2 weeks. I can't just walk away from a job. I've still got a house. I'm going to walk away from all this stuff, and you said, okay, you come. Well, in that 2 weeks, I looked for everything I could to where I could stay home and still get sober. And every door shut, every door closed. So I came. And, you know, my mom was the one who sent me here. She didn't send me, but, you know, she's the one that said, go to Freeway. She had no other source. She had no other recommendation. And after coming here in January of 19 and refusing to go away, I know why she was that way, you know.
So what was it like, judge's kid, military kid? You know, you weren't homeless. You didn't come from prison. Not everybody comes from prison. Not everybody's homeless that enters our program. And if you don't know, me and Andy are talking about the one-year-long residential program at Freeway here. Very strict, very structured, people in your business. What was that like?
Man, that was tough. Day one, you know, I come here and I thought you guys had jokes. You know, I get here, I'm scared. You know, I mean, I am in my middle 40s. I was 44 years old at the time. Scared to death, not knowing what I'm walking into. I've always, even though I never had control over myself, I knew I had no control. I couldn't fool myself. I couldn't fool anybody else. So I'm walking into a situation I have no control of. I could have ran, but running wasn't going to be an option. I knew I was going to wind up dead. So I walk into this house, and they put me in a room with this guy that's got tattoos from his eyebrows to his toenails that just did 16 years in the state penitentiary for Lord only knows what. And this guy, and Derek, he looks at me and he says, you came from a farm. And I said, yeah, I came from a farm. And he said, I know you're used to having everything you've ever wanted. he said, so I took my clothes out of the closet. And I took my clothes out of the dresser. I'm going to let you have the dresser. And I'm going to let you have the closet. The only thing you're not going to get is the bottom bunk. You know, he said, but I want you to feel like you're at home. As much as I can make you feel like you're at home. And in that instant, I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I knew it was going to be okay.
Heck of a roommate.
Man, I'm telling you.
He's loud. Hey, does he snore?
Probably no louder than I do.
So you both snore.
Yeah.
So you're in the house. You're learning how to live. Who was your discipler?
Steve Veland from First Baptist Church.
Great guy.
Love him.
So Steve disciples you. You get plugged into the church. And I think, in my opinion, and your mom is my friend, and I know she doesn't care if I say this, I think this was something that helped her grow in the Lord. I think she got more plugged in to the church. I think it might have pushed her a little bit to get more back into church. Am I wrong about that?
No, absolutely not. And in fact, I think if she was sitting here today, she would say the same thing. You know, I wasn't fully surrendered at this point in time. I was still holding on to things. I was still making plans for Andy after Freeway. There was things I still wanted to do, but God was working on my heart. You know, I tell people, I said I was a self-made man. I made myself make poor choices. I made myself lie. I made myself in bad situations. I was a self-made man. And so turning everything over and trusting someone, God, with things that I was always used to having control of was a difficult concept. But God was working on my heart, and as God was working on my heart and I finally started to grow, I'm a slow learner because I'm hard-headed, you know, and I'm starting to grow. My mom's starting to take witness. My mom's starting to see change. And my mom's starting to see the God that she's been praying to for so long. You know, I tell people all the time, I'm a product of prayer. My mom never stopped praying for me. My mom's always had a relationship with God. My mom's always been in her word. But my mom's not always been faithful in church.
She's a busy gal, too. She's a judge.
Yeah. Well, she's not only a judge, but she works for the Department of Justice. And she still does that.
Right.
And travels teaching drug courts.
So, didn't make it through the program.
No.
Had some bumps. Decided to go. But we still remained friends, and I feel like it was still good. You know, had some disagreements on some things. And anyway, so you leave, and you go on your own. And then what happens after that?
A face plant. Took a great big old huge face plant. You know, I got to talking to who my wife is now, Ashley, and you know, I start to resort back to little old me, and I face plant, and I find myself in the handcuffs again. Except for instead of doing what I typically did and run away, I ran to the people I knew I could run to, and I ran back here. And I took my licks. It wasn't easy, you know. I had to swallow some pride and humble myself. And that's exactly where I was going when I said I was hanging on to things. And it was in that instant that I realized that I can't serve a God and hang on to the old me at the same time. And I just gave it all. I said, I'm done. You know, God, you want the bad right along with the good. When I come to the foot of the cross, I wasn't clean. You know, I came to the foot of the cross dirty, and you cleaned me up. So I let go, and I take my lumps, and I go. And I start to serve God with the heart that I should have started with in January of 2019. And we probably wouldn't have had the bumps we had.
So you end up meeting a girl?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Well, you know, everybody thought I was stupid. I think most everybody did, but Ashley's a wonderful person. You know, I mean, listen, Ashley and I didn't even like each other at first. We tell people that. We're open about that. She didn't care for me. She didn't want nothing to do with me. She thought I was arrogant, egotistical, prideful. She was right. I thought she was stuck up. Turns out she just didn't want a guy around her, you know. But we're going to church together. She's got this unruly little kid that I just wanted to beat up every time I seen him. But our hearts started to soften towards each other. And we decided we're going to live life together. And we had to establish rules and a foundation. And the foundation was Christ. And the rules were, we don't walk outside of what this says. And we're gonna walk that life out together.
So you get married in COVID.
Yes.
It was a virtual wedding.
Yes.
I happened to be a part of that. Ashley is a graduate from the program as well, who has a phenomenal story. Her and her son, she was a single mom. And so you guys get married. You know, you don't give up on people. It's just because they don't make it through the program or just because something doesn't work out, it doesn't mean God's not going to use them. And it's an obvious case with you because Freeway stopped at First Baptist. COVID happened and some things happened there. And so we ended up partnering with Jeff Stone King on Freeway West in Golden Avenue. And Jeff Jeff got saved at Freeway as a homeless guy years and years ago, and he's now a pastor. And so one of our other graduates, Scott Gilmore, took that position there, started that Freeway. Then you come along.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing now, Andy? What's happening in your life since face planting, since making that phone call, leaving that farm life? How long have you been sober right now?
Right at 5 years, if you count the face plant, you know, which I think you have to. You know, so, you know, five years, stone cold. Man, not even a desire. Not even a desire. Of course, I guard myself. I don't put myself in a position to fail. Mm-hmm. But, man, I go over to Golden Avenue Baptist Church, and Scott Gilmore had called me, and he said, we need somebody to come over and run security. And I tell Ashley, I said, listen, I think the Lord's calling us over to Golden Avenue Baptist Church. And she said, you're crazy. I'm not leaving my church. And this was a long process, you know, and finally I just made a deal with her. I said, you know, we're going to leave this church where we were at, you know, because I knew we were being called. At this point, I had to trust God. I said, next week we're going to go to Golden Avenue Baptist Church. And after that, we're going to go wherever you tell me to go. I think that's fair. And so the next week we go to Golden Avenue Baptist Church, and the following week came, we leave here, headquarters, pull out of the parking lot, and I said, you haven't told me where we're going to church at tomorrow. And she said, I hadn't thought about it. We'll just go back to that Golden Avenue church. And we went, and some other friends of ours was there. Deborah Corbett, she was there, who was members at our church with us, and in our Sunday school class, a very good relationship with her. And she gets up at the altar call and goes to join the church. And my wife looked at me and said, we need to join this church. And we did right then and there. So now we're members at Golden Avenue Baptist Church, and we're just rolling with it. We're just going to Friday night Freeway. I'm serving security, you know, not really. It's pretty much your Sunday morning crowd, security not really necessary, but that's what I'm doing, being faithful members of church. Every time the doors are open, we're there. We're trying to find other areas to serve. Even taught a Sunday school class for Scott one time. And so just by being obedient one Sunday at a time, one Friday at a time, one Wednesday at a time, God started to open doors at Golden Avenue Baptist Church for my family and I. We started to get more involved. Jeff says, we want to pray for a men's house. We all thought he was nuts, you know, but, well, you're the pastor, you're in charge, we're going to start praying for a men's house. And he goes, I'm going to pray for that house across the street. And that's what I love about my pastor. He's very specific about what he prays for. He doesn't say, Lord, provide me a house. He says, Lord, provide us this house. And somebody wrote us a check and we bought that house. You know? So then the church comes to me and they said, you're the only one we have right now that can run a men's house. And I'm like, excuse me? So, you know, through prayer and conversation, I spoke with you and I spoke with Casey, sought that higher counsel. I decided to go ahead and do that. And so we're getting the men's house underway and we're starting the men's house. Then they come to me and they said, we want you to pray about being a deacon. And I'm like, well, what's that involve? You know, I don't even know what a deacon does, you know. So they tell me and I pray about it for a while and then I become a deacon in the church and I get ordained into the deacon ministry. Then Jeff came to me and asked me if I'd help him teach couples class, you know, and I'm like, man, I'm not a teacher. I said, but let me try it one time and see. Let me try it and see. So I teach couples class one Sunday morning, and I had an instant love to teach. It was instant.
Amen.
And I didn't want to do anything else. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to teach, you know, and you know that it's a calling from God when you get that kind of passion, when it consumes you, when you want to invest in doing it. So I agree to help Jeff teach his class, and Jeff says, well, I really don't have time to do it, so you're just going to teach it. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, so I start teaching the class, and I'm a deacon, I'm teaching the class, I'm investing in men in the men's house. You know, it took a while to get it started, but we got it rolling. Had some bumps, you know, it's trying to start something new, but we've got a good, solid group of men now, and
Had some graduates?
yeah, you know, so we've got 2 graduates, or actually we got 3. One of them's going to listen to this and beat me up because I said 2, but we've actually got 3. Mike Deckard, Cody Dodge, and Cody Toombs are all 3 graduates. Mike Deckard's getting married next week. He's currently in our second stage house, but he's getting married next week and going to move out. And Cody Dodge is going to move into the second stage house. And Cody Toombs is in the second stage house, furthering his career, going to school on the scholarship from BBC. You know, I mean, and these...
And you're preaching.
And I'm preaching, you know. Some things happened, and I was asked to take over Freeway West, and I was like, man, but I'm not a preacher. And they said, well, you need to give it a shot. And so I remember it, January 2023. I preached my first sermon out of Exodus chapter 8. My wife asked me, she said, what are you going to preach? And I said, I'm going to preach Exodus chapter 8. And she said, what, are you stupid? Why did you go to Exodus for your first one?
That's so encouraging.
You know?
I bet you were like, thank you, babe.
Yeah. I said, go big or go home. I'm going to know after today if I'm called to do this or not. And I did it. And it was like teaching.
Yeah.
I had an instant love for doing it. It was instant.
So how long have you been the director for Freeway West?
Since January of 2022, officially. Or not 2022, 2023. I'm sorry, I'm bad with dates too. But January 2023, I've been the director. You know, and when you're working for a small church on the west side of Springfield, you know, we're not a rich church. So I worked from January of 2023 to September of this year for free.
Yeah.
You know?
Let me give you a scripture.
Okay.
Jesus says in John 10:9, he says, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief does not come but to kill, steal, and destroy. I've come that they may have life and life more abundantly. And you entered by the door of the sheepfold, brother, and you accepted Christ, the one that lays down his life for the sheep. And God has given you not only a wonderful ministry to serve in, he's also given you a wonderful life. He's given you a child to raise a little boy, and He's given you an abundant life.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of you. And so I'm proud of what God's done in your life. It's exciting because your mom, who was a drug court judge, now teaches constitutional law in drug court to other drug court judges all over the United States. But she's also one of my good friends and a board member for Freeway. And God did a full circle thing with you in your life. And so I just, a couple questions. We're out of time. But do you have joy?
Oh, man. Oh, beyond joy. Man, I don't want to do anything different. I live my life for this. And you don't live your life for this without joy.
Are you happy?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because some people think you're grumpy. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's because my smile is broken.
Listen, how do they find you? How do they? Where can they hear you preach or come see you at what ministry? Where are you at?
So we're at Freeway West, which is at Golden Avenue Baptist Church, which is a ministry of Golden Avenue Baptist Church, which is 558 South Golden here in Springfield, Missouri. We have Freeway West on Friday nights. We serve dinner at 6 p.m. and we have service at 6:30 p.m. And it's a come-as-you-are service. All are welcome. We've got a lot of cool programs. I wish we had more time, but we got a lot of cool programs going on. We run 100+ every Friday night out of that little West Side church. Just got a brand new building built that we're working out of, and it's really a neat setting. And I'll tell you, a lot of people say it reminds them of the old gym on Talmadge.
Okay.
You know, brand new building, but old gym on Talmadge feel.
Amen. Well, I'm proud of you. I'm encouraged by you, Andy. I'm a fan. I'm going to keep praying and encourage you to the Lord. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me.
Yeah, you bet. Well, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you can like and subscribe we have YouTube, on your podcast channel, whatever you listen to, and you can invite a friend. And you can also support Freeway as we continue to do this production. It is a production of Freeway Ministries, and you can go to our website at freeway-ministries.com, and you can become a partner. Until I see you next time, John Stroup with One Broken Life. Thank you.